Hi everyone, my name is Herkith, and today we'll embark on yet another adventure in hardcore Minecraft. But this time, we're adding a slight twist. You see, when you create a new world, you have an option to tinker with the game rules of said world you're creating, and in these game rules, you have a switch where you can decide to disable regenerate health. This will mean that you won't regenerate your health when you consume food, but rather have to use potions or golden apples to regenerate your health. This rule, in combination with the hardcore mode, is commonly referred to as ultra hardcore. However, since I am significantly more stupid than most players and often act against my own interests, I've decided to take this challenge a step further, as in this case, I'm not allowed to use any armor whatsoever, and with said premise, I got to creating a hardcore world, which I named No Regen / Armor, which showcased my immense level of creativity. I left the seed blank, turned off natural regeneration, and dove right into our incredibly masochistic challenge. And after having spent what felt like 15 seconds, we spawned into the world. We started off in a tree, which was pretty convenient, as we could chop it down immediately. And after having chopped down our first tree like the absolute Minecraft pro that we are, I thought it might be a good idea to have a look around our surroundings. The main thing I was looking for was a village. Ideally, a village in a plains biome. The reason why we wanted it to be a plains biome was because the chests in those villages could possibly give us a decent amount of apples, which we could, in turn, use to make golden apples, which would slightly improve our odds of not dying a gruesome and probably quite underwhelming death. But after seeing that there were no villages in sight, I decided to craft our first wooden pickaxe and advance to the Stone Age, which was rather ironic as I have roughly the same level of intelligence as the people from that time. I also grabbed some coal as I thought it wouldn't hurt to have some. I then had a cheeky little look into a cave in hopes of finding some iron, but alas, no iron either. I then crafted myself a wooden axe as I had already managed to forget that we just got some stone. Nevertheless, I set off on the quest of finding a village which I could pillage, in a highly moral and ethical way of course. And just as we had set off on our journey, we ran into some sheep, which meant that we were now able to sleep, which was some rather good news. But since I had used up all of my hunger by running around like a toddler who had too much sugar, I had to take a quick break from my epic exploration adventure to cook some of the ethically acquired food I had accumulated. And in order to be a tiny bit efficient, I decided to chop down a bunch of trees whilst our food was cooking. The main reason was to get our slimy hands on some apples, but I also figured you could never have too much wood, with the exception of a children's birthday party. So then began the action-packed segment of this video, where we stared at a bunch of leaves in pure desperation to get an apple. But rather annoyingly, we only managed to get one apple, which was rather underwhelming. But just as we left the slowly decaying leaves, we actually managed to spot a village. So I scuttled over to it with immense excitement, though before I had made my way to the village, I noticed that it turned to night, so I decided to sleep in hopes of not getting completely decimated. And in the early morning thereafter, I successfully made my way to the village. So I started grabbing all of the resources we could get our hands on. And in our very first chest, we got ourselves a staggering 5 apples, which briefly made me not want to die. And in addition to grabbing the chests, I also decided to steal all of the village's hard-earned produce, the local wildlife, as well as the crusty remains of their only protection from monsters that haunt them in the night. And quite luckily, I managed to get 4 pieces of iron, which meant that I could craft myself a bucket as well as a shield, which meant that we were ready to go to the Nether. So I continued to loot the village and managed to increase my total number of apples to 15. I then set off once more, but this time, we were looking for a lava pool. I also decided to cancel all of the wild sheep that were unfortunate enough to be spotted by me, as I thought that it's always good to have food, even though it wouldn't regenerate any health from it. And after having explored for a couple minutes, I managed to spot yet another village. So I ran in and started looting once more, as it would almost be rude not to. And quite luckily, this village had a blacksmith, from which we got a staggering 12 pieces of iron as well as some apples, meaning we were officially no longer a peasant. I also stole the brewing stand from the village cleric, as I would most probably need it in the near future. I then ran off once more to continue my quest to find a lava pool, and after what felt like 2 minutes and 50 seconds, I ran into a ruined portal, which was a really good find, as the chests by ruined nether portals have a chance of having a golden apple, which I definitely wanted. And as I swam up to the portal in a very gracious and elegant fashion, I noticed that the nether portal was actually usable, and quite luckily, there also seemed to be more than enough lava to restore the previously mentioned portal, but as I opened the chest, I was rather underwhelmed. I then restored the portal to its former glory and grabbed myself some gravel so that I could make a flint and steel. And now you might be thinking, why didn't you just use the fire charge you got from the chest? And the reason behind that choice was that I am very dumb. So I lit the nether portal and prayed that I would get a decent nether spawn. However, I was rather quickly disappointed as I found myself in my least favorite biome, as it is probably the most dangerous one. But rather luckily, we apparently spawned on the outer edge of the Crimson Forest, which was a massive relief. Our main objectives from here was to grab as much gold as possible, so that we can craft golden apples and to locate a nether fortress to grab a bunch of blaze rods. So I ran past a couple deformed humanoid pigs and started grabbing some gold to make golden apples like the very smart and talented boy that I am. And rather epically, I managed to spot another ruined portal, but this one had a gold block. So since I was desperate for gold, I decided to bridge across a bunch of lava, which, surprisingly, actually worked out for me. And in addition to a block of gold, we also got both a golden apple as well as glistering melons, which was absolutely insane. I then continued my search for a nether fortress, grabbing as much gold as I could on the way. And after a while, I managed to craft 4 additional golden apples, which gave me an immense ego boost. However, that boost of serotonin didn't last for very long, as I got harassed by a whining cloud with tentacles, so I made the executive decision to flee in a very tactical and heroic manner. I then spanked a deformed pig to death using an overglorified wooden paddle, which got me both the Not Today as well as the Monster Hunter advancements. And after having accomplished such an impressive feat, I got into a ping-pong battle with a new whining cloud and won, which was very epic, and for some reason, unbeknownst to me, I made the decision to go through a basalt delta. I have absolutely no idea why I did that, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. However, it turned out that going through the basalt delta was a billion IQ move, as that made us stumble upon the fabled nether fortress. But there was one issue. I didn't know how I would get down from where I was. I then spent the next minute and 31 seconds troubleshooting this rather annoying issue using my very limited problem-solving skills. But after said minute and 31 seconds, I started pillaring to a nearby platform, which would hopefully allow me to get down safely. But I then realized that I could have just mined my way down on the platform I was already on, which became the new game plan. I then realized that I was still a few blocks above where I wanted to be, but I figured that if I place a block where I fall, I shouldn't take any damage. However, my estimation skills are still very much lacking, so I took half a heart of damage. I then started running in, but changed my mind almost immediately, the reason being that I still only had a wooden axe as a weapon. So I crafted myself an iron one and got on to figuring out the best way of entering the fortress without getting completely annihilated. But whilst I was drowning in the sea that is my indecisiveness, a deformed pig of the humanoid variety decided to attack me, so I spanked him to death using our brand spanking new axe. I then decided to take another half heart of damage, which was most certainly intentional, and ran into the fortress. And after a while of running around like a headless chicken, I managed to locate a blaze spawner, and quite luckily, it happened to be a caged one. But before I engaged the blazes, I decided to activate my second brain cell, and came to the decision to block off the corridor so I wouldn't get obliterated by a bunch of wither skeletons. And once I was ready, I ate one of my golden apples and started farming the blazes. This went surprisingly smoothly, as I didn't take any damage at all. That was until a blaze spawned on top of me, which almost ended my whole career. So I decided to take that as a sign that I should probably reconsider my life choices. So I ran into the treasure areas of the fortress, meaning I hadn't learned a damn thing. But the reason why we did something so incredibly stupid was because I wanted to get my hands on nether wart, as that would allow us to make both healing and regeneration potions, which would make my life a tiny bit easier. However, shortly after running into the fortress, I was greeted by a blaze, which wasn't quite what I was hoping for, and just to make the party even better, a wither skeleton also made an appearance, so I dealt with the mobs in a very heroic and brave fashion, and quite luckily, we managed to successfully locate some nether wart. I then continued exploring the nether fortress, acting as if I had absolutely no interest in staying alive at this point. And quite astonishingly, this actually paid off, as we got our hands on 2 diamonds. But after getting greeted by yet another wither skeleton, I decided to leave. The way back to our nether portal was actually quite straightforward. since I had been a very smart and sophisticated young man who had taken a screenshot of the coordinates of my portal. And right as we returned to the overworld, I got jump scared by a deformed pig who sounded very angry, and after a quick change of underwear, I started making my way back to the village we had found earlier. From there, I started collecting clay, which I was intending to sell to the villagers to get emeralds, which we, in turn, would use to buy ender pearls. I know, a groundbreaking concept. And whilst I was trading with the villagers to get ender pearls, I also remembered that it might be good to have some potions when we fight the ender dragon. So I started brewing some. I used our ghast tier that we had acquired through our epic ping pong duel to make regeneration potions and a glistering melon to get instant health. And once I had accumulated 16 pearls, a bow, as well as a bunch of arrows, and having used our diamonds for a sword, I started my journey to the stronghold. This was exactly as thrilling as it always is to walk a very long distance, but after a rather mundane journey, I found myself at the place where the eyes had led me. I then took yet another half a heart of damage for absolutely no reason, and all there was to do then was to start digging a 1x2 hole in hopes of finding the stronghold, but rather shortly thereafter, I hit a cave, which was most certainly not what I had hoped for, as entering it would possibly lead to my rather graphic and gruesome demise. But since my level of intelligence is comparable to that of an underdeveloped toddler, I decided to break the block underneath me, thinking there was another block underneath it. So I ran to one of the corners in the cave and blocked myself in as the very heroic and brave man that I am, so that I could regenerate my health. I then realized that there was a chance that I could find the stronghold if I would explore the cave that I had rather foolishly set my foot into. But I was rather swiftly humbled by a skeleton with aim assist, so I decided to tactically retreat and block myself in once again. And once the coast was clear, I ran back to the spot where I had plummeted into this cave and started digging downwards yet again, in high hopes that I wouldn't have to deal with this cave to get to the stronghold. But instead of finding the stronghold, I found yet another cave. But this one seemed to be a tiny bit safer than the one we had found before, so I decided to explore this one as thoroughly as I could in hopes of finding the damn stronghold. But I rather quickly found myself looking into a significantly larger cave that looked even more dangerous than the one I had left earlier, so I made the executive decision to go in a different direction. However, I rather quickly ran into 2 skeletons with enchanted bows, which I, of course, ran away from, and since I wasn't particularly keen on dying like an absolute noob, I went back to my 2x1 hole and continued digging. But I rather quickly found myself at bedrock level, meaning that we would most certainly have to dig a new hole to actually find the stronghold. Defeated, I started pillaring my way up once more, but when I got back to the initial cave that we had found, I realized that I had only checked one side of the cave, so I decided to give it another try. So I started exploring once more, and during my rather epic excursion, I managed to find some diamonds, which would almost be rude not to grab, but alas, still no stronghold, so I made my way back to the first cave that we had found, but came to the rather rude realization that it was crawling with mobs. So I ran for my life and blocked myself in, with the plan to dig my way up to start digging a new 2x1 hole that would hopefully run into the stronghold. But rather surprisingly, I managed to find the stronghold whilst I was digging up, which was very epic. I then crafted myself a diamond pickaxe to rid myself of the peasantry, that is an iron pickaxe, and started looking for the portal. And after having explored the stronghold for a bit, I managed to find it. So I finished making my final preparations and noticed that I had forgotten to bring my health potions. However, I had absolutely no intentions to go back to the village again, so I dove right into the end. I was then greeted with the thrilling task of mining a bunch of endstone. But since I had a diamond pickaxe, it was actually not that excruciating. And with that, the final boss battle was a go. So I started taking out all of the crystals, but as I was doing that, I heard an angry enderman which made me clench my buttocks. And once all of the crystals had been masterfully dealt with, I got on to the incredibly exciting and thrilling pastime of staring at the ender dragon until it decided to start perching. And rather annoyingly, once it was perching, I couldn't reach it unless I jumped, which was incredibly risky. So initially, I decided to simply let this perch go, not take the risk. But since I am about as patient as a middle-aged mom with road rage, I decided to try to deal a tiny bit of damage to it. However, just as I tried to hit it, I was launched into space, which, once again, made me clench my buttocks. But after that, we got on to a rather mundane dragon fight as per usual. I was then showered by the Ender Dragon's balls, which was a very nice feeling, and at this point, our challenge was technically completed. However, I thought it would be funny if the first equipment of this world would be an elytra, so I decided to try and grab one. So I went through the portal to the outer end and threw Ender Pearl at a nearby island, which surprisingly uncovered an end city with a ship. So I made my way over and got onto the ship, where I took out a shulker to grab myself my wings. I then decided to do a tiny bit of looting as an attempt to satisfy my immense greed. But with that, I made my way back to the main island and jumped into the portal, officially ending our challenge. So there we have it. I beat Minecraft Ultra Hardcore Plus. I hope you enjoyed the ride as much as I did. Please leave a like and subscribe if you did, and let me know if there are any challenges you would like to see me take on in a future video. But anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.